2, 1. Barbara.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the NYRSF Readings, New York Review of Science Fiction Readings. My name is Barbara Krasnoff, and I will be your host for this evening. And our engineer and producer, as always, is Jim Freund. Before I introduce you to CJ Cherryh and Jane Fancher, our most honored guests. I just want to mention that our next event will be the first Tuesday of next Monday, November 7th, and will feature To Be Announced. We haven't gotten exactly the person yet, but we will have soon. And we will make that announcement on Facebook and let you know. December 5th will be our annual family event, so we're looking forward to that as well. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce CJ Cherryh and Jane S. Fancher. CJ Cherryh's stellar writing career spans over 4 decades with numerous accolades, including the Hugo Award for Best Novel. Her talent in crafting richly detailed universes and complex characters is unparalleled in the genre. She has written more than 80 books since the mid-1970s, including the Hugo Award-winning novels Down Below Station and Citeen, both set in her Alliance Union universe, and her Foreigner series. She is known for world building, depicting fictional realms with great realism, supported by vast research in history, language, psychology, and archaeology. The author has an asteroid, 77185 Cherryh, named after her. Referring to the sonnet the asteroid's discoverers wrote of Cherryh, she has challenged us to be worthy of the stars by imagining how mankind may grow to live among them. Born in Renton, Washington, Jane S. Fancher grew up raising and training horses, learning to fly a plane, playing piano, singing, drawing, and studying math, physics, astronomy, and anthropology. While working for Warp Graphics, ElfQuest, she joined a project to produce a graphic adaptation of C.J. Cherryh's Gate of Avril. I'm sorry, Ivril. Ivril? Ivril, sorry
Ivril,
about that.
actually.
This endeavor led her to a new home in Oklahoma City, where she found her calling and began writing her own novels. She lives in Spokane, Washington, with partner C.J. Cherryh. And here they are, C.J. Cherryh and Jane Fancher. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I first want to say that I'm absolutely thrilled about this. My first book that I read by CJ was Merchant is Luck. And since then, I must have read it about 10, 15 times. But what we are here for is to talk about your latest addition to the Foreigner series. And why don't we start by you describing that a bit?
Oh, the Foreigner series involves it's a first contact novel about 200 years away from first contact. It didn't go well. Humans actually lost the War of the Landing despite their advanced tech. They were confined to an island, and only one human is allowed to visit the mainland and interface with the locals. That human is Bryn Cameron, who is the interpreter and peacemaker for the chief executive of the Atevi, who are the indigenous population. And that's where we are. He's been at it for a number of years now.
Now, the Atevi are obviously they're not human. Can you tell us just a little bit about them so we have some idea of?
Well, the Atevi are they're a robust people. They're quite tall. Bryn stands about the size of a 10-year-old boy next to most of them.
The rest took 22 books to write.
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, you ask her to describe them. It's 22 books.
Yeah. But
It's still going.
in general, Bryn in his early years was fairly athletic. He was into downhill skiing, and because he is an adrenaline junkie in secret, but he was assigned this job in which no one, his predecessors. Well, that was interesting. His predecessors took a hands-off approach to the Atevi. They simply compiled a huge dictionary. Every word had to be studied by experts and translated because they were so afraid of getting into another war with the Atevi. And Bryn was the last choice. His department didn't want to appoint him. They sent over other candidates when the last one was tossed out. The last translator was tossed out by the new IG, the new governor.
Not because he wasn't really good, but because he was too cheeky.
He didn't follow the rules well, and so he was their last choice, the one they didn't want to send. And of course, Tabini, the head high honcho over the Atevi, immediately started testing him and actually spoke to him. And Bryn answered, and everything went downhill from there. No one had ever spoken aloud in a conversation between them since the war, and Bryn became well, fairly important to the Atevi, and that's where we are.
And that's where we are. And do you need to set up the reading that you're going to be doing?
Well, I think that the passage that we're going to read sort of reaches back into the last book. There's only one person that you really need to know. There's Bryn. There is his Aishid. An Aishid is a complement, usually 4 in number, of bodyguards. Assassination is legal if you can get away with it. You're just not supposed to cause too much of a ruckus when you do it.
And if you can get an okay first from the powers that be.
Yeah, you have to
file first.
You have to file intent and give them fair warning and all of that. But at any rate, his bodyguard is with him, and also let's see. Oh yes, there is the Dowager. She is Tabini IG's grandmother actually, and no, she's his grandmother,
and the other grandmother and Cherryh's great
grandmother, and she is she's a very individualistic power among the Atevi,
to say the least.
She rules half the continent, but she interferes in the other half quite frequently. So she is a passenger on the same train that has been carrying the lot of them away from the most recent disaster toward the West Coast. Bryn's estate is where the train station is before it turns northward and gets out of the region entirely.
Okay, well, let's hear a bit from Defiance.
All right. This takes finding my place. That's easy. The glasses are a must, alas. Well, we don't want to drop everything. There we are. There. Okay, so I go, and then Jane will simply take up when it's her part.
Oh, which is kind of how we write.
Yes. Oh, yes, Jane, I'm going to get through this yet. Okay. Oh, and it was raining. Had been raining. Of course it was raining. Rin's neck ached from last night. He was still tired, still muddled, and still unhappy with himself that he had brought this trouble home with him. Issues unresolved, that was the problem. Were they staying or were they going? His staff at Najida had a right to hear from him, but they were still under communication silence. The Oh, okay.
Uh, I don't know if they can hear that background stuff or not.
Are we?
Go ahead, Carolyn.
Okay, shall I go ahead? Okay, here we are. All right. Issues unresolved, that was the problem. Were they staying or I'm sorry, I'm getting a feedback.
From you guys.
No, wait. Okay, let me try again. Issues unresolved, that was the problem. Were they staying or were they going? His staff at Najida had a right to hear from him, but they were still under communication silence. The Transportation Guild would call. No, they would not. Could not. Damn the communications blackout. It was possible, Najida Station being generally unmanned, that Ramasso had no idea the train was even coming. How were they to get transport? Someone had to call Najida on regular comm. It was a damned long hike even for him. The Dowager certainly could not travel in one of the runabouts. Was she even in charge? Was it possible Kennedy was giving all the orders? It was even possible the red train was dumping every car but hers to take her on to the medical facilities in Kobo as quickly as possible. God, but why offload the wardrobe cases, which could easily sit on the train? He had clothes in his own closet in Najida Estate. He should make that call. Security be damned. They were within his province. It was his area, and his Eddie Major D, Ramasso, was very apt to forget his fluency in Ragi, if unreasonably pushed by Ragi authority. Banichiji, we will need the bus and the truck. Is there any relaxation of the order for silence? Thunder boomed over the racket of the engine. Bonici said, Kennedy said he would call. Well, that was a relief. And not. It was, damn it, still his province, his staff, his train station, and his Aishid that was being ordered about with no grace of an answer to previous questions, as if their loyalty or competence could be an issue. Anger, yes. But there was also a leaden concern. One sort of thing might rate this kind of silence. That thought that had begun to gnaw at him last night, if Illicity had died. That news would have to be kept absolutely quiet until they could get to the capital. It might even warrant letting the Lord of Najida and a large number of guild off at Najida while the red train made a different sort of run north. If Kennedy was acting on Tabini's orders, no, that was absolutely excessive. Tabini would never keep him ignorant. And Kennedy could be a damned pain, especially under her orders. She had to be in charge, which was why they were getting nothing from Kennedy. Which brought him right back to why. Was she just generally set on her way and consulting no one, avoiding any and all interference with her intentions? Or was he being shut out because he had failed in whatever she thought he ought to have done? In Caperna, he had had his orders from her. She had sent him to Brigani's home to represent those orders, allowing her to stay in the relative safety of the train with all her Aishid. And under his administration of the situation, Brigani's daughter Husai had been kidnapped. Nomari had eluded his guard and disappeared, to turn up later, and they had made a deal with a scoundrel. It had all worked out eventually, but the cap on it all, none of his fault, had been Tiago's escape from Amarja, capital of the Doja Sigyn, accomplished before they had even left Hasduran. So she could not blame him for that. But might she have sent one of her 2 naval ships after that fugitive ship? Had her grandson not stolen one of the warships she had stolen from him and moved it out of Caperna harbor to block the Doja Sigyn port? Both ships were thus engaged. Neither was available to pursue Tiago, Tabini having decided to take on the Doja Sigyn while she dealt with Sinjin. But did she remotely think the Piediaigi had any part in Tabini's move? Did she believe he had known from the start that Tabini would send a train full of guild speeding past them in Hasduran? Or that Geige would send down that lander complete with a new secure communication system, which allowed Tabini to order things from the convenience of his office in Shejidan and take over her operation? He had not expected any of it. No one had warned him of any of these things. None of them was his doing. And it was not his fault that Tabini's force was currently pummeling the hell out of whatever supporters of the Shadow Guild could still be found in the northern Merid, while the core of the problem spread to the west coast. Tabini was finishing Illicity's war for her, outright taking over her operation as well as one of her ships, and she had pulled out of Caperna before the gunfire had even died away. Not running from the fight, never Illicity. Going after that escaped ship, he had no question, the train being what she had for pursuit. And shutting out the Piediaigi ever since, not receiving him, not listening to him, not trusting him with her plans, even knowing, damn it, how much those plans would affect his responsibilities at Najida. And that might be the point, might it not? He was not a Tevi, might not have the overwhelming gut-deep drive to protect his own. She did. More of that gut-deep emotion, that primal drive, than she admitted to. As he, gut-deep, came at the same conclusion by a different route, with different wiring, different imperatives. Did she think he would fail to care in its diverse senses did not even translate well into Ragi. Trying to equate what she felt with what he felt stepped right off the logic of it all into that vast gulf between what was a Tevi and what was human. She was going to do something. Days of dogged movement across a long, badly maintained rail said that if she was still in command, she was either mad at Tabini or set on pursuit, or both. She just did not want him making calls to Tabini. That had been clear. Could she? Thunderbolt of a convoluted thought. Possibly think that he had had one of those new communication units all along and was still using it? It was possible, as she might see it, that Tabini had handed him one of those units before he left Shejidan. He had understood Kennedy had gotten them from Tabini's force when the train stopped to watch the landing, but that did not preclude Tabini having given him one earlier before he ever boarded in Shejidan. Certainly the operational shift onto the new network all had been pre-planned somewhere, dependent on Geige getting a lander down to do that job, but he had not been in on that planning, not in the least. He had been one of the least knowledgeable individuals in the whole operation, with the possible exception of Nomari and Brigani. But in her reckoning, it could be. He could have such a unit. Kennedy had not gone so far as to order a search of his premises. She had stopped short of that. And if he had such a unit, he could have known things about Tabini's operation, being in Tabini's confidence, that even Kennedy might not know. God, it was ridiculous. If she truly believed that he would deceive her after all this time. But no, if she believed he and his Aishid had crossed her, he would not be standing here a free man. Perhaps she was supposed to have stayed up in Hasduran. Perhaps she was not supposed to have taken the red train with all its equipment down that horrendous grade. Tabini had certainly not been ignorant that 2/3 of his naval force, supposed to be in the strait, official barrier between human Mosfera and the Atevi mainland, was headed instead for the Merid. Perhaps she was not supposed to have made the move on Brigani, turning him from adversary to ally. If one removed Brigani and Caperna from the operation, the lander could have come down, the new communication system could have gone into operation, leaving her informed but safe in Hasduran, to simply reverse the red train and go tamely, safely back to Shejidan. Her part in the operation done.
But before they had ever left Shejidan, he was fairly sure it was she, had sent a well-equipped force to Caperna, ready to attack or aid Brigani in the guise of a train needing service. She had directed the 2 warships south. Tabini had let that happen, possibly because Tabini had decided he was going to use them. Tabini could not have missed that move. He took a deep breath. He was letting his imagination run wild. It could drive one just a little crazy trying to track the chess game those 2 played every day of their lives. They were coming in at Najda, that was all. The whole mad operation at Caperna was over. The train was going to stop. Things were going to sort out. She would give orders. There was no chance anyone else was going to. They could get ahead of whatever was going down in Ashidama Bay. Elicidi and Tabini were both rot. That had happened before. There would be time to work it all out. Another deep breath, a deliberate sip of the sugared tea. He had dressed as far as his shirt and trousers and an older pair of boots. The coat could wait until they were ready to leave the train. He was reasonably confident they would leave the train, though there might be, he hoped there would be, a simultaneous offloading of equipment for the entire guild force. Tents, field pieces, ammunition. It all might be setting up by the time Kennedy used the roundabout means to contact Ramasso, possibly asking Tabini's office to make the call if they wanted to maintain themselves opaque to observers and settle themselves comfortably at his own estate. Thick, wonderful mattresses, floors that did not shake. No, it was not. It was going to go as it had to go. Things would finally make sense, and he was relatively sure he would not escape the bulletproof vest on this short trip. Indeed, yes, there it was, hanging with the coat. Considering the general situation and all the other pieces milling about in confusion, he did not plan to complain about it. Hopefully, he could talk Elicidi into more than a felicity of 2 days' stay and allow everyone to get some real rest. Take time to brief Ramasso about the potential trouble south of them, and possibly, if they could gain a few extra days, set up a situation that let him be free to answer Geige's needs. Granted, Geige would be needing him to be up at the spaceport. It was a straight run-up to Kobo and a shorter one to the spaceport, actually closer from Najda than from Shejidan. There was that in favor of his being here. Hopefully, too, Elicidi would be content just to keep Tiago contained in Ashidama until the mess to the east was mopped up and the saner heads who accompanied Tiago had time clearly to contemplate their future and their best options. He had far rather negotiate the Shadow Guild out of Jorda than try to remove them by force. Deals could be made, amnesties, untidy as that would be, granted the damage they had done. Mercy, not for the Shadow Guild's sake, but for the sake of innocence in the way of future action. It was very much the Shadow Guild technique, hostage-taking, living shields, and moves that generated terror and disruption. Mercy put the legitimate Assassins Guild at a disadvantage in dealing with them, but given the situation, the Shadow Guild might rather live than be hunted down. He could put it to them that way. He would enjoy putting it to them that way. The bus is coming, Algini said, drawing everyone's attention. Algini's earpiece had evidently found some confirmation on the ops feed. They had been getting nothing from Kennedy. The market truck is also coming. Bren paused with teacup in hand, so long that Narani began to hover by, anxious to take it before he outright spilled it. He surrendered the cup and stood up. Well, he said, about to say that he was relieved. Thunder boomed right overhead. Nerves assaulted by the explosion up in Hasduran twitched. Personnel will board the bus, Algini continued, unperturbed. The truck will be a little late. It was on the far south side of the peninsula. On Kajidama Bay, that was to say, ferrying supply. Perfectly ordinary activity. The Eddy were building on the end of Kajidama and moving material over from Najda. Lord Geigy had granted the Eddy more land on Kajimenda, and the market truck, as well as the earth mover and Bren's yacht, were frequently in service to their needs. The ordinary reality of Najida asserted itself, a balm to frayed nerves. A second thunderclap. "Dare one guess it is raining?" Bren asked in dour levity. Jago cast a glance up at their tiny patch of sky midway across the car. "Pouring," she said, and more cheerfully, "but not snowing." It never did on the southwest coast. It might be chill, but it would never be snowing. In Hasteron, they had been up to their knees in it. "Will the Dowager disembark?" he asked. "Do we have word on that?" "She will," Banerjee said. We shall go in the first lot with Canadi's unit. We will move all principals in the first run, some staff in a second." So, not a wholesale dumping of rail cars to speed the Dowager north. His gut untwisted another notch. 7 seats for him and his household, not counting Bendanda, 9 for the Dowager and her Aishid, 11 counting her physician Siegi and her attendant Asimi. Nomari without his assigned guard, though they would likely accompany him to the bus door. That left seats, the only 2 other potential principals. "Homura and Momochi," he said. "Are they coming?" "That is the question," Tano said dryly. "That will be Canadi's call," Banerjee said. "Better they be with us," Bren muttered. Their guard was, to be precise, under Canadi's command, and best that pair be under watch while bodies were shifting about. As for comforts, all the regular staff would be there to greet them, preparing rooms and meals. It was possible Ramasso was only now summoning staff from Najda village to come to duty. There was no knowing how much warning he had had. One hoped the new network had taken care of that mundane matter of some time ago, ending in a perfectly ordinary phone call from the Bujavid advising Ramasso to bring in staff and turn on the lights, with the possibility that could be intercepted, the sort of risk they always had. But with heightened security on this trip, Ramasso and staff might have gotten very short notice. That was no matter. Najda was secure. Kajimenda likewise, under Eddy management, would be. And their enemies aboard those Dojasigi ships might have reached Jorida, but they would not yet be well set up, one hoped. All the same, an abundance of caution, reckoning that there might have been operatives on Jorida long since, and was decidedly in order. There was that hill near the station, part of the foothills of the southern mountains to the north, and another to the east, a perfect spot for spies, or snipers with a death wish. That had not been as high a consideration when Ilicides engineers had sighted the train station. Guild would cover what the wooden barriers did not. It was just a matter of crossing the platform to the steps with fair dispatch. It was always a worry, more or less, depending on current politics, but it gave his mind something to worry about. He could deal with the Dowager's displeasure. Given the configuration of the train, it had been impossible to gain access. In Najda Estate, it was nearly impossible to avoid contact, in one sense or another. And the jolting and racket would have ceased, that above all else. Everybody would benefit. He consulted his watch out of habit, discovered it set and wound, not by his hand. Late afternoon, was that right? Supper? He could not remember when or whether he had had breakfast. In the real world, dinner would be far along in preparation. A Najda dinner. He was not sure he had the capacity for it, but it was the first chance at sociality. Sometimes, Carolyn, the words you come up with. Sociality they had had since Capernaum. That's not mine. And could go far forwards, setting the tone for the rest of their stay, however brief. A dinner. Brandy. An update from Ramasso. Perhaps more from him to Ramasso, but not necessarily so. A sane conversation with the Dowager would be a welcome relief. Information. She would tell him things Canady would not. Another brandy. Stiff one, if you please. Then sleep on a bed that did not shake. We're done. Uh-oh.
Do we have
Barbara, are you there?
good. I thought you were going to leave us out here alone.
Oh no, it just takes a couple of seconds. Thank you very much, CJ Cherryh and Jane Fancher. That was great. This was from their new novel, Defiance. We're getting lots of great questions from the audience, but I have a couple first, and it is you are writing as partners. What is that like? How do you do that?
Well, we have we plan story together. We talk about logical next moves. We don't so much write what you would say an English class outline of what we're doing. We may, for instance, go on a long car trip. We put quite a lot of miles on the car, just reading and talking. Reading a bit of what we've done, talking about where we're going, how we're going to solve the mess we've gotten everybody into. Um, we just we do these things more or less by the seat of our pants.
And we've
and
written together for 35 years now.
yeah, so
This is just the first time that it's actually official that it's
yeah, right.
Collaborations.
So
Go ahead, Carolyn.
it's not exactly I have a novel outline and I'm going to write this novel. I don't think I could even do that. I literally know.
You did on Egg. You did on Cuckoo's Egg.
Oh yeah, that's the only one. That's the only one. I just sort of filled it in as I went. The outline kept getting more and more complicated, and finally I added dialogue. But in general, we work together with both of us having ideas, and we tend to run particular characters. They're characters we know better than the other one, so we have our other personas within the stories, I suppose.
Okay, and as a writer, this I've been dying to ask you. You have some incredibly complex and believable universes. The Foreigner universe, you have this entire culture and all these characters with their various backgrounds. How do you keep track?
I tend to. It's a place I go in my head. If I'm in a particular place, I know what's over the horizon. I will be wondering what's going on in various cities with the various clans, who's up to what, and what they've got to do with the problem I'm about to present them. So it's more like like if I were planning to go to Rome tomorrow and I knew somebody there, I would have ideas in my head about what we might be doing or seeing or up to or what our business was. So it's more like that.
I got a secret to tell.
Go ahead.
She's never reread the books. She will go back and check things, but she's never actually gone back and reread the books. And every once in a while, as someone who is for the first time going back and rereading them all, I find the occasional consistency error, but nothing that matters. And
Watson's bullet.
It's so she has been developing this thing in the back of her head the entire time.
In the normal world, you call it insanity, but I do know
NPD.
yeah.
That's what writing is. It's controlled multiple personality.
That is absolutely fabulous. Okay, I'm going to go to some of the questions that are being asked. The first one is by John Larson, and his question is, which cultures influenced your creating the Atevi? Some of the details are quite familiar and others are not.
I start with the biology, and their biology is quite different. Their family structure is different. They just are not human. And the line where it says that the word care cannot quite translate. It's a matter of it's a matter of relationship. Relationships matter, and there's emotion about the relationships, but it is not the same thing as we would say love or whatever. Attachment is very, very strong. The tendency to defend one's own, the ones that have connection by family or by politics to oneself, that desire to defend is ferocious. And that kind of instinct carries all the way down into the animal kingdom. You do not try to cut one macheta out of the herd. You will have a fight on your hands. And so the biology is consistent all the way up.
In answer to the actual specific question, after all these years, I kind of we've talked a lot about this. We are both old. We have had lots of experiences and studied a lot of different cultures. We're both really interested in anthropology and culture and all that kind of stuff. And one of the traps that a writer can fall into is basing something on a specific other culture, because that culture developed in its milieu, in its environment, in its it is specific to its history. And so because Carolyn has this, I mean, she taught Latin and ancient history, and she's just got lots of cultural stuff in that head of hers. And so she has a whole lot to draw on, but that contributes to the answers that the questions you ask when you're developing the culture or developing the people. What it does is expand the library of options that she has to draw on and choose for what's going to work for the Atevi, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And one thing I've always admired was the idea that the Atevi are truly alien. It's very hard to create a truly alien society. So many science fiction books that I've read, the aliens are they're too human, if you know what I mean. So,
well, and the cool thing, excuse me for interrupting, but the cool thing for me about the Atevi is that they are deceptively human-like.
Yes.
And
yes.
The great thing, I mean, it's like, oh, Carolyn, what's your bug people? You look at one of them and you know you're dealing with, the Mahjong.
The Mahjong, yeah.
You know they're weirder than weird. You expect them to have, something. The hive mentality is they're going to be weird, but the Atevi are deceptive to the humans that deal with them, and it's a trap that the readers even can fall into along the way. And I always loved when she brought Cherryh in, the young son of Tabini, who is like Bren, only at a much younger age, caught between the two worlds, and works very well in both worlds. And we get it. He's the only other viewpoint than Bren's. And
he's really the only viewpoint that I could have taken to go inside the Atevi mind. He's a child. He's a child. He is developing. Yes. And he is pushing at the boundaries of his world and wondering why things are the way they are. And as such,
and going through the Atevi equivalent of puberty. So he's sorting things. He's sorting out that biological difference.
Yeah, he's come from brat to young romantic.
But also what's interesting about him is that at a very young age, he is exposed and lives with humans up in the space station.
Yeah. Yes.
So he is actually developing a psychology that may be different from any other Atevi up until now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely unique. And he has to figure it out because he ultimately has to be IG. And so he one of the fun things is him figuring out, okay, I can't go to grandmama, to great-grandmani to sort this out for me. I have to figure it out because I'm going to be boss. Okay. I adore Cherryh. I hate to write him sometimes.
I want to apologize ahead of time because I'm going to be mispronouncing people's names and their. So this is from, I think, Kilhend or Kehend 703. How did Ilsildi first introduce herself to you?
I knew that Tabini, as a young ruler, had to have inherited something from someone in the way of governments that pass hereditarily. If you don't have somebody who had a pretty good grip on what was going on before you take over, if you're very young, you're in a lot of trouble. Illicity was during she's actually been IG more than once, um, due to
No,
the
she hasn't.
well, all right, all right. The regencies she has had.
She's been regent. She has not been IG. That's a
That's true.
point.
That's true. But she has wielded the IG's power, and
She still
she
does.
very frequently when he's not looking. Um,
I'm
but
sorry.
she is the worst sort of great grandmother to have, but the best because she's also very clever, and she will solve things, and she is. Tabini has been influenced by Bren. Possibly Illicity has been, but she would never admit it, and her reactions
Oh,
are.
she has
Uh,
been. Everybody is. He's contaminated them all.
but Illicity is
Oh,
more
excuse me.
the unvarnished Atevi.
Okay, Alley Cat asks a question. Will there ever be an official pronunciation guide published or posted?
I could do that on my Facebook page fairly easily. Once you get the hang of a few names, you can begin to figure out how the rest are. But it is very much consonant vowel consonant vowel consonant vowel. There are very few consonant clusters. So and the
We should
accent.
have you do an audio one, Carolyn.
Yeah,
We can do that. We can set it up. We should do an audio one.
yeah,
I mean, you can do
that would make
a
sense. Hmm.
you
Good
can do a
idea.
listing too. But yes, thank you. We will do that.
I think it's a great idea myself. Snazin asks, have you ever talked to translators of your work? What issues have come up in translating to other languages, and how did they deal with them?
I want to know
You know,
that too.
I have not. I have dealt with translators into Japanese. I have gotten questions about the meaning of certain coined words, but and I have looked at um, the results in translation. I One of the things that was rather surprising, but of course, for instance, on Gate of Ibrel, when it was translated into Italian, it was translated into the Italian Middle Ages. All the words, all the evocative words, you know, it's not English, it's Italian and uniquely Italian. So it's kind of fun sometimes to look at the changes.
The Bren books actually the actual words used, the expression, because he is trying to make difficult concepts clear, might be easier than some of the other books to
That's
translate.
possible, yeah, because the foreign words, the foreign concepts are neatly defined within the
Yeah.
foreign word.
And other than that, so much of it is him trying to sort out the details of. There's some of the most internal books with the most amazing, and I can say this because I did. I mean, I'm a reader for most of them, with some of the most fun moments of high intensity action that poor Bren has to survive. Uh, but so much of it is internal, and it all. I came to her the other night and said, I'm rereading them for the first time, and I came in and, do you realize we have spent this entire chase and battle on board a train? We have seen nothing. And I'm absolutely spellbound for page after page after page. It's amazing how she can build this intensity when we don't really learn much of anything. It's all speculative on Bren's part. Poor Bren.
Thousand miles of travel and no scenery. The red train has
Yeah.
the red train has no windows.
Okay, so now I have Nicole, who is writing under who is writing in the account of John Larson, and she wants to know. She says, "I am curious. What is your process for creating characters and their worlds? You are exceptional in both."
Oh, thank you. I think I start sometimes by sketching. I'm a fair sketch artist. Um, and I let the pencil make shapes on paper until I begin to have an idea, and that's one way I do it. In the case of the Atevi, I was much more abstract. I was in a lot of the creation, but it also started with a sketch. Sometimes I'll do a map um, because I'm thinking about a relationship between two countries or between two, and then again on the other project we've been working with a star map with actually real stars. So we've been looking at how they're related to each other, where they lie relative to each other, and
And in a milieu that's very well established that we're having to go clear back to the beginning and cause.
right, exactly.
It's a wonderful puzzle. As someone who never wrote until Carolyn told me to, I was working on the graphic novel, and the company that was publishing it uh, went out of business. Not my fault. Carolyn said that I had said I wanted to try writing. Now, I don't remember ever saying that, but she insists that I did. And
You
so, and she wanted me to try because I'd been editing her stuff and other people's stuff they would bring their stuff to her. So she said to try it. And I bring this up because it's what her process is. And I went to her on my morning of my 36th birthday because I wanted to remember when I started writing. And I said, okay, how do I start? She said, write me a one-page outline. Oh, bigoted spacer boy comes on planet, gets changed and blows up spaceship. That's basically what it was. Gets religion and blows up spaceship. And I took it to her and she says, okay, fine. I mean, there's a little more details than that, but it's only about a page. And she said, and I said, what do I do next? She says, take two characters, throw them in a room together and see what happens. My question at the end of the day was, how do you stop writing? Because once you listen to the characters, if you spend, for me at least, if I spend too much time, and I have very complex universes, if I spend too much time building the universe first, then I'm limited by what I can do with the story. So it all happens together.
That's very true.
And the characters, they react, and I put them under a heat lamp and ask why. And that's how their background happens. And that is, I've watched her. She obviously has a whole lot more experience than I do. And so she has a lot of other options. But as someone that was sort of floundering as to where do I start, and to have it just click that well and that fast, that is what she told me. And it really has been true. When I am stuck, I take two characters, throw them in a room, and see what happens. And I might not use that. I did in this case. It didn't end up being the beginning of the story. It ended up being the beginning of the second part. But you might not use it, but you start to learn the characters, you start to get to know them.
Mhm.
And it's a wonderful dynamic way. It wouldn't work for everyone, but so much of writing is figuring out, and this is again one reason we're together. When I was working on Gate, she came up to a convention. I was staying with my brothers and or living with my brothers working on the comic, and she came up for convention, stayed with us for several days, and started reading Satine to me. She was through about the first 40 pages, I suppose. And I asked questions. I just reacted and I asked questions. When she went home, it became the joke of the house. This was, of course, before cell phones, before free long distance. Every night at 11 o'clock, I would get a phone call because I lived in Renton and she lived in Oklahoma. And when the rates turned, she stopped writing, gave me a call, and read to me. And I asked questions. Why this?
Satine
What's he
wouldn't have been
thinking?
what it was without her.
And that was really, we were friends before that, but that's when we found out that the partnership was something that was going to last. And the next summer I moved down to Oklahoma, supposedly for a couple of years while I finished the graphic, and then I started writing, and somehow we're still stuck together. I'm not complaining.
Well, and to that end, Vaughn Hansen, hi Vaughn, wants to know what are the best things about working with a co-author and what are the unexpected difficulties?
I don't know that there are any real difficulties as long as you get along well together, and don't have ego issues. But in general, I think it's because when you get stuck, you can always say, "Take it. What do you think? Let's go to our favorite pub and work this out." And we
And
have had the
it's
most amazing conversations in the pub with, people next door.
yeah, one time I was writing a short story that was about gun runners in Turkey in the 1950s, and we went to a fancy little,
French
little tiny
bistro.
tables and French bistro, and people started clearing the area around us as we started talking about Uzis and gun running. We cleared the place, but I think that writing can be very lonely. And in some ways that's good because you really, when I did the rough draft of the Netwalkers books, it was just me and those characters. I mean, they told me everything, and I couldn't stop writing. This allows us to, because I'm familiar with her work, I'm familiar with what she does. Our first book together was Alliance Rising, and I always wanted to know about JR. I wanted Captain James Roberts' story. And I also have always had questions about how the Alliance actually was supposed to work, because we jump right in on the so because I'm familiar with it and extremely familiar with it. At one time I was a whole lot more familiar with that universe than she was. So as I say, she doesn't go back and reread things. I do. And so I hope at least that Carolyn finds it fun to have somebody who has experienced these characters and this amazing situation. And the same thing with the Bren books. I have questions. I look at causality somewhat differently than she does. And so I ask questions, and I make her define things that on her own I know she wouldn't do. And she has, well, she's Carolyn Cherryh. I mean, what can I say? She is amazing to watch work, but sometimes she needs to have her word salad solved.
Oh, yes.
And sometimes for me, she misses some of the things that I want answered. And so I think that's more than anything else what I add when she hands it over to me to edit. I
I
stick
tend to
stuff
go,
in
yeah, I tend to
that
go
I want
straight
to
to the,
know.
I go arrow straight to the heart of the problem, and Jane will see details around the edges that need answering, that that help make it textured and part of a whole world. So
Which
yeah,
means the books can get more complex, which is not necessarily always a good thing when you have a deadline. But it sure is fun for me.
That we have D. Jansen, who is asking, have you been able to get the prior 2 books sorted out for audio production? I need my foreigner audiobooks.
alas, no progress there. Nothing that I know of. It could change. I just don't know. You know, it's sort of not my end of the business, and there's very little I can do about it except to say, yeah, it would be really nice if this happened.
We'll sit you down and you can undermine audio. Tell them get their act together and we'll put our own out.
Sally Ann would like, here's somebody else who particularly likes the character Illicity. Were there any humans past or present you pulled from to develop her?
Catherine de Medici, perhaps. But yeah, the art of wielding power when you are not in charge is sort of it's delicate. It can't be too brute force, but you certainly have to know where all the levers and switches are.
And
And
she also has the advantage of being an IG biologically. In other words, she commands her presence commands the force of an IG. And so unlike a human that would have to do it completely through politics, to a certain extent, she can do it by
barter his way to power. Yeah,
Yeah.
she can, by reason of who she is, who she's descended from, and the personal organization she commands, Kennedy being part of it, her chief of security.
Yeah, but her pheromones or whatever it is.
That too, that
Yeah, I
too.
mean,
And it does play a part in it. I
it
mean,
plays a
if you're in
huge
her
part.
presence,
Yeah,
if you're in a teva, you are picking up something just from being near her that is somewhat scary.
that's one of the really cool things to me about the books. If I can, I love the fact that you are dealing with a biological leader that, if they can maintain that leadership position in the gut of those around them, they have pretty much, at least with Tabini, pretty much absolute power. And he has to wield it wisely. And I think that one of the real cool things is watching how Carolyn has created basically an autocracy that is not cruel.
Yeah.
And is truly for the good of the people and the various things involved to make that work. And Illicity is a major factor in making that work because Tabini has to stay in Shejidan. Illicity can go outside and knock heads. And so they make a good 1-2 punch.
Yeah. Basically what I feel is almost is that they create a balance.
Yes.
That one cannot go too far without the other one balancing it out, and that prevents it from becoming an evil autocracy, as one might say, because there's always this balance of power going on.
Hi, buddy.
Oh, we've got.
Oh, shoo.
We're about to be cat bombed. Yes.
No, he's not coming up.
Oh, please, cat bomb us all you want. Tracy,
He comes up if he wants to. He's half Bengal. He does what he wants.
Tracy F. Williams has a very technical question. Speaking of star maps, do you know where the world of the Atevi is in relation to Earth? And can you share the approximate location?
I think it's
Far away.
far away. Yes. I think that it is certainly beyond the conveniently accessible cluster of stars that our sun exists in. I mean, the spaceship that got there by being royally lost, and not only lost once but lost twice because they made a two-step. It is, however, perhaps not quite as far as they thought it was, which comes clear later.
Paul Schofield, I'm sorry, Pony Schofield, nearsighted, talks about how you created he thinks it's cool that you created the Atevi with black skin, and says, and remarks, different cover illustrators have pictured them as literally black or varying shades of dark brown, like black humans. Which did you intend?
I intended that they be black, as in black, true black. In general.
But have you ever tried to paint that?
I know it's a real problem. I gave, artists, and Jane is, have to see it differently because, you could end up with somebody who looks like a black cutout in the picture. They have to have highlights, and I think that probably in biochemistry that a black brown or whatever is probably much more viable. I mean, it just seems to work out that way. There are very few critters that are just absolutely black. Hair can be, but when you get to other structures, it doesn't tend to be. So I think that yeah, I just thought, well, it just seems logical that it would be a predominant characteristic of the inhabitants of the planet.
Angus Orvid has a question that I actually have as well. Are there any film or TV projects related to Cherryh's books in the works?
Not that I know of.
Which is way too bad because they're so cinematic, the way that they are written.
Yeah, they get optioned from time to time, but
the
many are
problem
optioned,
is selling
few are
them.
made.
The problem is selling them. What the producers all want is something that's like everything else, and Carolyn isn't like anyone else.
It's not Star Wars. It's not Star Trek. It's
not Game of Thrones. Not
well, Game of Thrones.
Carolyn,
perhaps
you
a
need
little
to put more sex in them. That's all. You just need to put more sex in them.
Maybe that's it.
Why don't you talk a little bit about your upcoming books? I understand that you are now writing back in the Alliance Union universe.
Yeah, that's the one we've referenced. Alliance Rising was the first one, and we have turned in Alliance Unbound.
Alliance Unbound will be out sometime we don't have a date on it yet, but probably in the next few months sometime. And Carolyn's working on the rough draft of the next Bren book, and I'm working on the rough draft of the next Alliance book. So
that's amazing.
And then we switch.
And sometime in here, for those who actually know my books, I will get Homecoming Games out this next year.
Yay!
It has been done for years.
It's such a good book.
It's the problem is by the time I got around to finishing it, no New York company. It was too long since the last book. So it will be available in ebook, and I'm going to even look finally to get the whole series, the whole redone series out with actual paper-bound books for those who like that. So anyway, just for those who know, yes, Wesley and Stephen have an ending that I'm happy with. I'm proud of it. But I've never been able. I finished it, and within the year when I would have been doing the changes, my sister passed away, and I had 2 hip replacements. Carolyn had 2 hip replacements. We both survived other medical things, and then my brother passed away, and so I've not been able to sit down. I got to make a cover for it, so and do all the
could you
changes.
tell us a little bit about it? What is?
Oh, Netwalkers is it was my first book. Basically, I wanted something as far from Carolyn's Union Alliance series as universe as I could get, because the last thing I'm a very slow reader. I don't read much, and I almost read nothing other than Carolyn now because I live in fear of the copyright police. So I want to make sure in my own head that it's all mine. But her in her Alliance Union, nothing communications don't travel any faster than the fastest ship. So I fundamentally changed that dynamic and made a computer network that lives in space, that gives instantaneous communication, but it has problems. And then I have a very troubled, crazy couple of young men that are the main characters, and some crazy politics, and I really need to learn a one-line description of these books, but I was in the early 90s. I never having been on the internet, never having even been on CompuServe. It's always been pleasing to me that people who live with computers were convinced that I was a computer person with my ComNet, and it's like, yes. But
it's a darn good story.
It's and it's 4 very long books, and actually 5 with and the first one is Netwalkers. They are available in ebook on Amazon, and I love them. Then I have my ring books that are again. I was inspired by one of those perpetual motion ring things, all the concentric rings. I had to come up with something fast because Dahl wanted a fantasy from me, because the other one had come out through Warner, and Warner had gone a different direction and kept control of the books. So anyway, I came up with a magic system that was all about making a buck. And so I have been told that my fantasy reads like science fiction and my science fiction reads like fantasy. I don't know. I just write the books. I just tell the stories the kids tell me.
Okay, we have a question from, and excuse me if I mispronounce this, Iasophobic, who wants to know, have you had any thoughts towards revisiting Ariadne Emery? That story feels unfinished.
It will probably always be unfinished because universes tend to be kind of open-ended. But I would like to someday. I would like to begin to finish that story,
We'll
because
probably do after JR. We'll probably do Signe Mallory,
Mm.
and that was the one that we were talking about doing next, is Signe's story. And
That's great.
yeah. At least that's what we talked about. Now, if Carolyn gets all and I wouldn't object to going back to the boys. Come on.
yeah.
I love Ari. Oh, pardon.
Phones always get in the
Real
way.
phones. Real phones. Oh, yes.
You actually have real phones in your house. That's fabulous.
Well, it's a legacy.
Yeah. But yeah, we had one until only about a couple of years ago, and we finally got rid of it.
We just have too many things linked to it right now. I
Well,
think
yeah,
we're going to look into.
there's that, and there's the fact that it is a number that has been with me forever, and so everybody knows how to get a hold of me that way, if nothing else,
Mhm.
And the other could be problematic, but now that there's the internet and YouTube and all that sort of thing, people can be found.
One of the things that I usually like to ask, and you can say I don't know if that's possible, is are there any authors who you particularly like to read? I mean, besides each other.
I've read widely in the field. Um, Sometimes personal friendships
Patricia
color my
Briggs.
reaction.
I
Yeah,
will
Patty
give
Briggs.
I will give Patty a Patricia
Yeah, I
Briggs.
give.
I
Yep,
love her stuff, but then I
yep,
love Patty.
yep. She's a close friend. Um,
She
and
lets me ride her horses.
yeah,
Well, and that's bribery.
yes. But yeah, there there are no few. But
In all honesty, I am truly the world's slowest reader. I'm a little bit dyslexic, and I have to reread sentences several times so that I slowly build. It's one reason I'm good for editing, especially when Carolyn writes the most incredibly interesting, beautiful word salad of any author I've ever read. And I have to figure out what she actually meant. um, and as I say, I live in constant fear of the copyright police, and that is no lie. Once I started writing, I almost completely quit reading, and I've got a basement full of books I would love to
that
read
becomes a
someday.
problem.
Yeah.
It really does, because you have your own idea factory, and you're careful who you let into it. Because if they're too much like you, that could be bad for both of you.
Yeah.
So I think the more you write, probably the less you read. I mean, I read science things, I read factual things, and I read the occasional book that is just outside my normal zone of operation. Um, but so if I want a story too badly, I'll write it.
Very good. And so Defiance is now available
Yes,
for
it is out.
as is Alliance Writing.
Rising.
Rising. Alliance
Like
Rising.
a rising
Been a long
star.
day.
Yes.
That's okay.
And when do you have you mentioned when Alliance Unbound is expected
No,
to
we
be
don't have a
available?
schedule on that yet.
Mhm.
We don't have a schedule yet, but
I think it's
finished.
probably it's finished. Betsy has it, and thank you, Betsy, for your
Yes.
patience. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, all of DAW. You're great. We love you. We've had a rugged few years, and they've been very, very patient. So have
Yeah.
our readers. We apologize for how long it's taken to get these books out.
We've been pedaling as fast as we could, COVID and all.
No, you've done absolutely marvelously, and I am so glad to see the next books in the Foreigner series out. It's because I wait with bated breath every time.
Thank you.
We gotta say, everybody sees the yellow plane. Remember Cherryh and the yellow plane? And my brother, who I mentioned passed away last year, was actually our plane consultant for the book.
Oh my!
And,
yes, he was.
That's
the dedication.
That's the reason for the dedication. And my dad had a flight school, and Chip has been in been in the airplane business. That's why I say I can get a plane up and down in one piece. Probably now. I could have when I was younger, but I don't really have my license or anything because at the same time as I was growing older, my dad was about ready to retire. He moved out and we got horses. And so I was helping him build fence and train horses. So that's why the weird background for me. It's got all these weird things.
Yeah, but thanks to Chip, we have a very specific plane, and I won't tell you which plane, but people who know planes may have some fun trying to figure out which plane it is.
That's
And
great.
poor Todd doing the cover had a different plane, totally different color. And we saw it and it was like, Todd, we hate to tell you this. You know that dreaded yellow that artists hate? Guess what?
That's a yellow plane.
That's a yellow plane.
And not only that, it's a specific plane.
Yeah, but he did a good job on that. I
Yes,
think
he
he already had.
He did a beautiful
But
job.
but he actually did a beautiful job. It's actually one of my favorite covers, color-wise. He always does a good job, but this one, it just glows. And it's because he had to figure out how to put that yellow plate in there.
Yes, and I do have to compliment the covers. I mean, I love them. And they so much illustrate the characters for me.
And can you imagine being an artist having to do basically the same characters for 22 books and make them unique and different? I just think that the early ones were Michael Whalen, and who came between him and Todd?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, gosh.
Mental blank.
They've all done, in their own ways, they've done a wonderful job. And I think that Bren has been lucky to have that kind of visual backup.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention Jago.
Oh, we've got an aeronaut here. Pony Schofield was wondering whether Jane's brother flew a Cub or a Super Cub.
We had Cessnas for the flight school primarily, and whoops, I have one ear that keeps falling out. I don't know what they do with these little earbuds. Uh-oh, not a cat toy shoe. And then he went down when my dad closed the flight school. He went down and worked for in Portland for.
Was it Beach?
Beach, yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, more kitty. His name is Yushu. We call him Shushu. And he's a very big half Bengal. Do you want to come up, honey? No, you want to rub. And so I don't push him into making himself known because he's half Bengal and all confused.
Yes, well, cats do what they want to do, not what we want them to do.
He has a definite program for his day, and no one interferes with it.
Come up and say hi. No.
Actually,
okay. we've been watching these talking cats with the buttons on YouTube. If anybody has not seen Billy the Talking Cat, you will have your mind blown. What they are doing, and I figure that getting him involved in that could actually be the best thing I've ever done for him, because he's very smart and he's very bored, and these things. I think Billy has a vocabulary of about, the last I heard, 60 some words, and makes sentences and stuff. The cats and dogs both. They're amazing. But so we're going to be trying a new thing with my 12. Is he 12 years old now, Carolyn?
Yeah,
I think he's 12, and we're going to try teaching him to talk. We'll keep you posted.
Oh, good luck. Well, it is now about 20 after 8, and unless anybody has this is last call for questions from the audience. Otherwise, I will ask if there is any subject or anything that you would like to tell us about that we haven't covered.
I think we've been over most of it. We're just happy to be at work, and there will be more.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Happy to be coming out the other side of an interesting
An
times
interesting, yeah, half
few
decade.
years, and hopefully we will be able to. Oh, what was that?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Keelhead
Thank
says,
you.
glad you could really get back to the writing after so many hard delays.
Yeah,
Thank
but
you
see,
indeed.
only if you all come and help me weed my garden next spring. We have a 5,000-gallon koi pond that we put in the backyard when we got a big corner lot in the middle of, but anyway, it had this big backyard that was all
Dead grass.
dead grass. And so we took our little mantis tiller out there and raked and shoveled, and we now have a beautiful oasis that is full of weeds because I started out the spring really good, and then a whole bunch of stuff came up and it got away from me.
Well,
took out
the winter's going to kill all the weeds, so we can start fresh next
Oh,
spring.
dream on.
Oh,
But it's beautiful. We had a really, really bad winter before,
yeah.
and we had all these beautiful koi that were and we lost them all. So now we have little guys.
One of our Keelhead 703 was wondering what is the next con you will be attending? Will you be attending any cons?
I don't think I have any on schedule at the moment. Do we, Jane? I don't.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. So yeah,
that's you. That's one thing I let you handle.
we may well be at MissCon next year.
I imagine. Yeah. We'll go to
MissCon is likely.
We're gonna do RustyCon this year.
Oh, okay. We're gonna try to.
You said something about RustyCon.
Yeah. So.
Well, thank you very, very much. This has been absolutely fantastic, and thank you for writing again. We've really missed your books. Right. And again, for everyone who's watching, this has been the NYRSF Readings with CJ Cherryh and Jane Fancher. And I am your host, Barbara Krasnoff. Our producer is Jim Freund. And if you'd like to make a donation so that we can continue these, you can make that at paypal.com/paypalme/ourwolf. That's HOURWOLF. Thank you so much. This was really, really great.
And thanks to everybody out there for joining us. This is exciting. This is our second podcast. Yep. Wow. It's so cool.
It really is. And I'm sure it's not your last.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for setting it up. It's been great fun.
And good night, all.
Good night, everybody.